Good evening and welcome to Selectmen's Roundtable. I'm Selectman Morris DiPaolo. I'm here with my two colleagues, Moira Miller and Henry Fitzgerald. Jim Kane and John LeBeau couldn't make it, and they're going to be sorry about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're here today with Eric Pusey at Broken Creek Vineyards on 614 South Street. It's a great place out here. Actually, it's probably one of the parts of Shrewsbury that's left that actually is still almost in its natural state, vegetated. So anyways, we came down here. They've been here for 2 or 3 years, active?
6 years.
Six years from when you started.
2010, yep.
And they've got a tasting room here and all that, but I won't steal Eric's thunder. So we thought maybe we could start by having Eric tell us a little bit about how he got into this, what they're doing here, and anything else that comes up related to this. So, Eric?
Okay. So, my wife and I have always had a passion for wine, and so I started making wine 15 years ago. Started with kits and moved on to grape juice, and in fact I first started making wine at Deja Brew.
Okay, yeah.
Was my first experience.
Yeah.
And then progressed from the kits to the juice to the buying crates, and finally said, look, we want to try to do this on our own. And then we progressed from buying the property and putting a few rows in to doing what we're doing now, which is about 2.5 acres planted.
And this was like, this is a long process to get this going, because I think if I recall, you came before the Board of Selectmen for a license 2 years ago, maybe? Was it that long?
Yeah, for the winery itself.
For the winery itself.
Yeah.
And then
it took us
you
that
had the
long.
plan, and It
took us that long, literally just to get this building constructed so that it passed all the various rules associated with the industrial, the commercial, the retail, the manufacturing. So that was a long process, and even just the grapevines themselves. Once we plant them, they take 3 years to develop before you're actually allowed to. You should let the grape and fruit grow on them. So it's a process of training the grapevines. You're literally cutting grapes off, which always hurts when you're saying, "Oh, wait a minute, I can make wine out of this," and you're cutting the grapes off, and you really want the plant to develop. And once they develop, by the third year, you're growing your grapes. So our first grapes were planted in 2011. So in 2013, 2014 was the first year we really got crop, and it was 2 tons. And then last year was our second year, and we got 4.5 tons.
Wow.
So it's been a great process so far. It's a family event for us. We invite our entire family. We've had pig roasts here for plantings, and we now have pig roasts for picking season in the fall. And we get a lot of people here. A lot of people want to help out.
Can you tell us a little bit about, you said tons, but I don't know how much tons relates to quantities of liquid that are generated from it.
So if you do the math, it takes between 2 to 3 pounds of grapes to create 1 bottle. So if you sort of back into it, last year we would say technically we did around 3,000 bottles, a little over 3,000 bottles worth of wine. That's what we manufactured from those grapes from last year's harvest.
Oh, and so that all of that, and you actually have the whatever the right term would be, the winery is located here as well.
Correct.
So then there's the process of fermenting, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so what we do is we pick the grapes, and traditionally what happens is whites come in before reds, and so I think it took 4 separate weekends for us to pick. And what you do is so the real process is each week you're testing as you get closer and closer, and we're getting really in the weeds on the technical part of it. Is essentially the grapes get more and more sugar and less acid, and there's a crossover point where you say, okay, you're there, let's do it. And we invite family and friends, and we go out and pick. And once we pick the grapes, you put them through a crusher destemmer, which technically just grinds them up. The whites you press right away, which is you're separating it from the skins, the seeds, the stems, and you just have juice, and you start that fermenting with yeast. Within a week or so, the wine is now, all the sugars are gone, and it goes from having virtually no sugar, because we ferment till it's dry, and then the sugars are pretty much gone, and then we let it sit and just slowly let the particles in the wine precipitate out. We filter it and we bottle it, and within 6 months to a year we can drink it. The red process is a little bit more extensive. You pick the grapes, you crush them, but then you put them in a barrel, and you put the yeast in it. And what happens is, as the yeast ferments, all grapevines or all grapes, once they're pressed, actually come out clear. They look like a white wine. What gives red wine a color is the skins. So letting it sit on the skins creates the color. So within a week or so, the grapes themselves, the grape juice has gone from a clear color to a red, and the longer you leave them on the skins, the more color you develop. That's where the flavor comes from. The tannins, if you're into some of the bigger wines, you get some, the texture on your tongue. And then again, we put them in the reds. We put in barrels, and we let them sit in the barrels for 6 months to a year, depending on the type of wine we're making. And then again, we filter it, and we put them in bottles. And the bottles need to typically sit for at least a year and a half before we typically are drinking the wine. So it's a much longer process.
So you hear about cellar temperature or room temperature.
Yeah.
When you're in the process of making the wine, what temperature do you have to keep the room at that you're?
So when you're fermenting red grapes, typically you actually do it at a higher temperature, somewhere in the 80s is traditionally where you're doing a red. Whites you typically will keep a lot cooler. Once the wine's in the bottle or even in the tanks, you're keeping the temperature fairly cold. I mean, you just want to stabilize it. In fact, it's called stabilization. If you've ever opened a bottle of wine before and you've noticed there's some crystals on the cork or some crystals in the bottle, that's really just the acid themselves that have crystallized because that bottle got really cold. It's not bad for you. It doesn't really affect the taste all that much. It's just more an appearance. So what happens is, once that precipitates out, you're left with crystals. And I do that because typically in this area, I will actually let the temperature drop in my cellar for an extended period of time during the winter, because that actually takes some of the acidity out of what's classically a problem in this area is you have a higher acid level because you have a shorter window or shorter growing season. So the grapes themselves have a tendency to come in a little bit more acidic. But by keeping them in a tank and letting that temperature drop, I get rid of some of the acidity, and then I can bottle the wines without having that much of a problem with it.
Well, we're enjoying a summer white here, and it's very good.
Thank you.
I mean, it really is. It's cool. It's crisp. It's and this was made from grapes that you're growing right here on the South Street property.
Yeah.
Just a gorgeous area here.
Thank you.
We're on the deck, and Peggy's sitting in the back here. She's camera shy, but she is here. But it's just a beautiful setting, and people can tell it's a nice summer evening. Sun's going down. Very pleasant. Just a
Eric,
place to stop by.
Before we forget,
Yeah.
you are open for tastings on a limited schedule. What are the hours, and do you hold events? Can you host events or whatever here?
Yeah. So on Saturdays and Sundays we're open from 12 to 5, and then we do host events for example, by appointment on Fridays as well, or our evenings. So we've had bridal showers, business meetings, corporate, civic events. And that we've only started doing that recently because we only opened back in April. So it's been a short time so far, but we've had a number of people come by, and since we're starting to book more and more of the events now.
Can I ask a question about the land here? Is there anything unique about the soil in this area that helps the kind of grapes? And I don't even know the variety of grapes you might have here.
Oh, okay. So the last question first. The variety we have here, we started out with 11 different varieties just to see what would grow on the property. We still have 9 different varieties. We've whittled some of those out because they just really don't take to the property, the soil, with the weather conditions here because it's so cold in the winter. So what we did is whittled it down to 4 major types. We have what you're drinking here is the Summer White, which is a Riesling and a Cuga White. And the Cuga White is one of the major 4 that we grow. There's a Vidal Blanc, a Vignoble, and then for reds, it's a Marquette. And the Marquette is a hybrid grape. It's actually a cross between a Pinot Noir and a Sauvignon Blanc. So they take the flavor profile of a Pinot Noir, they cross it with a cold weather grape like a Sauvignon Blanc, and you come up with a red that you can actually grow here. In fact, I was telling Mo before that what we're talking about looking into now is growing a Cabernet Sauvignon, which you can't typically grow in this region at all, but they've crossbred it with a Norton grape, which is indigenous to this area, and we're talking about planting at least an acre of it
awesome.
next spring. And ideally, we'll be able to have a locally grown Cabernet Sauvignon grape.
Oh, that'd be great.
wow.
So
That's my wine of choice. So that would be yeah. I'll look forward to that one.
So, just generally though, in this area, this part of the country, people don't think of wine that much. I know, but a few years ago, when I got active in tastings around different wineries, Connecticut, southeastern Mass, Rhode Island. I don't know about how much further north. I know some parts of New York State have vineyards, but it's really not that uncommon here, especially over the past 30, 40 years, right?
Correct. So what's happening is they're creating a large number of grapes that you can grow in this climate. When you talk about New York, even upstate New York, where you have the lake effect, so you have what's called a microclimate. Same thing down in Westport, down that area near the ocean. You have a much longer growing season. So when you're growing grapes in those regions, you actually change the zone. We're a zone 5. We border on a 6 a little bit, literally right here in central Massachusetts. We're down there. They border almost on a 7. And 7, the zone 7 is where you can grow vinifera grapes. So you can grow, the Cabernet. You can grow Zinfandel. You're pushing the envelope on some of those, but you can grow some of those varieties we can't grow here. To mitigate the problem of the cold weather, they're now crossbreeding what they call creating hybrid grapevines, and those will actually withstand the weather that we have. And so you're getting that. In fact, the grape, that Marquette I talked about before, they're growing that up in Vermont. Actually, that was created by the University of Minnesota so they could have some red grapes they could grow in Minnesota with their cold temperatures.
Wow.
So you also, when people come to the wine tasting, right now they can bring their own food. So if I wanted to bring something snack, a hors d'oeuvre, picnic lunch for the deck here, we could do that.
Yeah.
And then I understand you may also at some point be bringing in some charcuterie type of thing.
Yeah, so we're chatting now with a few caterers as well as some cheese shops. We don't serve food just yet. It's a whole different level of requirements that would need for compliance purposes. But we're talking with them to do some catering so we could provide pre-made selections of cheeses or charcuterie platters. We do certainly tell people, look, if you want to come here and you want to bring your own food, we've actually had families come here with small children. They set up a blanket, they put a picnic table,
Awesome.
they set up either a picnic table or a blanket. They've spread food out with the kids. They're playing out here, and they've got a glass of wine and they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
So it's worked out great.
It's 4th of July weekend coming up. I'm already thinking I'm coming over there. I'm bringing the cheese, and this will be a great stop. This is awesome.
So we've toyed with the idea also of in doing cheese tastings, so inviting some of the local cheese, the artisan cheese makers, and having them come here, and they can present their cheese, and we'll serve them with the wine, and do a combination. So allow them to show what their product has, and show ours as well.
So Eric, this is your opportunity to say, how would they contact you if they want to do
Yeah. So if you want to reach out to us, it's brokencreekvineyard.com. Check out our website. There's a phone number there as well, or reach out to us via email, and we'll get back to you.
Good.
You know,
I also just want to say, with the sun going down, I can finally see you.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a pretty spot over there.
But that must be good for the way it casts on your vineyard over here. And I don't know quite, refresh my memory, how many acres do you have here?
The property itself has 40 acres. We've got 2.5 planted so far. Of
Just 2.5.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
So it's actually 4 tons came out of 2.5 acres.
Yeah.
That seems to be pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Use
Yeah.
of
It was a good crop. You have good years and bad years, like you do with a lot of different fruits and vegetables. It was a good year, so it'd be interesting to see what I get this year.
And that was coming off a bad winter, right?
Yeah, but again, with the snow that we had, it wasn't that bad because the snow insulates the plants.
Okay.
And again, the plants themselves are meant to be grown here. I mean, I've got the varietals that do that. I've had some problems with some other ones which I've pulled them out because they just don't do well here, and it's a waste of space if they don't.
So what do you expect will be a good yield, an average yield, as this vineyard matures?
Running around the same thing. So, if you think in terms of if I can, in 2.5 acres, or call it 3 acres, if I can continue to get that same, 3 tons or 3,000 pounds per acre, I'd take that. I could probably get up to 4 as the plants mature. The clusters get larger and larger, so you do get a little bit more grape juice from each vine as they get older and mature.
So how's this? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. That's all right. We'll see. I told you we're just going to ask you a question.
Yeah,
until the
it's
time runs out.
perfect.
Right, exactly.
Can you grow? Can you extend the 2.5 acres to another acre, 2 or 3, 4 acres beyond that?
Yep. Yeah, and that is the intent.
Okay.
So I've got another 3 to 4 acres up behind the barn on the hill that's already cleared. If you could walk up there and look in I think it's about 4 acres. So that's the next step is to expand up there, and then if things go real well, we literally could expand out into where you see the woodlands out there. We can go out that direction as well.
I was just wondering if this year being so dry so far, what impact that potentially has.
For me, it's actually good. I mean, even you mentioned something about our soil, and we actually have a real high water table here, and I think it's because 2 to 3 feet down there's clay. And grapes, the old adage is grapes don't like wet feet. So for it to dry out here where we have a high water table actually is an advantage. I actually have a wellhead at the very top of the property. There's a wellhead up there, and I dropped a pebble in there this past weekend, and I'm like, it must be dry out, being at the top of the hill. Nope, I heard a splash. I don't know how deep it is, but so actually it has worked in our favor not to have a lot of rain so far.
So how many different wines do you sell here? Because you also make some wines from grapes that you bring in to the site. You don't have to grow everything here to produce,
Correct.
to sell it or bottle it under your name.
That's correct.
You have to make it here.
Yeah, so we bring in wines from California. In the past, we brought, I should say not wines, but juice or grapes from California. We've brought juice in from New York before. So, the idea is if we want to supplement what we grow here with additional either styles of wine, types of wine, or expand just the amount that we have, then we can bring those grapes in, and we'll buy crates of grapes, and we'll do the same process as we do now with our own grapes, crush into stem and press, and go through that entire process. The other option is to buy drums. You can buy 55-gallon drums of juice, and they've already done some of the work for you, and I've done that in the past too. It's a real time saver. It doesn't give you the same artistic capability to play with the wine as much, because some of the whole process of making wine is how long do you leave the grapes on the skins, and what's the temperatures, as we talked about before. So you can get really creative with what you want your wine to taste like from start to finish, and you eliminate some of that the further along you are in the process where you create the process.
So how many wines, different varieties of wines do you make here?
So we have 4 different varieties that we make here. Well, we have 4 major grapes that we that we grow here. We have 7 grape styles or wines that we actually have on sale here. We had 8, but we just ran out of what we call the Carnivore Red, which is a blend with Merlot and Cabernet. It was a hot seller for us, so we're down to 7 now. And the other thing I do have technically fermenting downstairs is some raspberry, which is a great dessert wine, and ideally we'll be bottling that soon, and hopefully by the fall we'll be ready for sale.
So people can only buy at the vineyard, right?
Yeah, at the present moment we're only selling our wines here. We're not going through retail stores or restaurants.
Right. Have you kept a log of where people are coming from to do tastings? So is it mostly from Shrewsbury? Is it from out of town?
We do ask, and my wife has a tendency to make sure that, okay, where are you coming from? How'd you hear about us? And we've had people from all over. We've had someone from Texas, Pennsylvania. I think the neighbors have done a really good job of broadcasting this for us. They've been here and they've tasted the wine. The group on the hill on Appaloosa Drive, I believe, have their own Facebook page for the neighborhood. And so we've had some people like, well, we heard from your neighbors on their Facebook page that you guys have some really tasty wine, so we want to get here and try it out. So the word is spreading.
Social media is a great, great mechanism to,
Well, the word's still getting out, because I know when I've talked to people and said we were going to do a Selectmen's Roundtable here. What do you mean we have a winery in Shrewsbury?
Right.
We think we're so developed, and we are, but there are still spots that are still green.
Yeah.
And people don't realize and they don't come down here. They're just the
Right.
corner of Shrewsbury, so
Yeah.
people don't come down here unless they know somebody or they have a reason to come. So you're not getting the drive-by traffic that people
That's right.
would know. But I know as I've talked to people, I don't know about you folks. You tell them people are really excited about it.
Oh, great.
So it'll be interesting to see how it builds for you and how the community reacts to it. But it really has been met with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of pleasant surprise that we
Right.
have something like this here.
It's very unique. It has been, we've been received extremely well. The people coming here, they really seem to enjoy it. They said they'll spread the word for us, so we're excited about that. That is on us to get out more, and we have full-time jobs, so this is just our hobby.
Right.
So getting to farmers markets and spreading the word a little bit more is part of our game plan as well.
So, Eric, as one engineer to another, you must be a chemical engineer. Is that
Electrical.
Electrical. All right, I'm leaving.
I actually didn't do that well in chemistry. It's surprising.
So what drove you into just your love of wine?
Yeah, the love of wine and actually the love of outdoors. I mean, I really, and my wife can attest, it's hard to pull me into the winery. I really want to be outside. I just love being outdoors. I love the plants. I love growing things. So I think that's the fun part.
Well, that's great. It's really great to find something that's your passion, and then to be able to have the dream, and then now, make it happen.
Yeah,
is
it becomes
very,
a reality,
very
and
cool.
sometimes we laugh and say, "What did we get ourselves into?" And other times,
well,
like, "Wow, this is actually doing well. This
yeah,
is great. This
yeah.
is great. This is fun." So.
Then you start doing the math, and you realize that 2 acres. No, you need another 2 acres.
Yeah.
Before you know, you need 20
That's
acres.
right. Yeah,
Well, we've got that already to expand here.
That's
So
exactly.
that's good.
Lay awake at night figuring how I'm going to do this. So.
So do you have any problem with because you are out here? So we should tell folks this is south of Route 20. It's South Street, south of Route 20.
Right.
So if you haven't been down here, it's still very farm, rural woods. Do you have problems with any animals?
Oh, yeah.
Deer trying
Yeah.
to eat your grapes, or
Yeah,
I
in
would
fact,
think.
the first year that we actually had some crop, it was a small number of plants that were ready. I would say I probably had 600 pounds of grapes, and I was all excited, and I was out there with my measuring tools and had called the kids up saying, "This is it. It's the big weekend. We're going to pick for the first time." And that was a Sunday night. I came out on Thursday and said, "Well, my last chance to do some testing. Let's see where I'm at." There was nothing left on the vines. It was, everything was gone.
Really?
I'm like, wait a minute, did somebody come out with some scissors? Because literally, it was almost like somebody had cut everything off. The deer had come through
They
and
found
cleared
it
the place
and
out.
cleared it, yeah.
So I now have a
that's
7.5 foot
discouraging.
fence around the
Well,
entire.
so
Yeah,
you
I
can,
know.
so you could actually use them. You could tell when it's ready to pick because they'll be out
Yeah,
there
that's
ready to
right.
eat.
Yeah,
They figured it out.
The best barometer yet.
So you have a fence around the whole thing.
Yeah, so I take it down now, but
Yeah.
if you were to walk around and you can see where the number
Right.
of posts
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
you literally can, you'll see there's and it does a really good job of hiding itself. I mean, it's black, but because it's a mesh, it's a finer weave. You really don't see it until you get up to it. It's like, oh yeah, you do have a fence there. The deer, because it's 7.5 feet, haven't tried to jump past it.
Yeah.
The interesting part is I had problems with turkeys that first year as well. There's a number of
Oh, they're
there's
everywhere.
They're
a large
They're
crop,
center of town, yeah.
group of turkeys here, and so I had some problems with those. But as soon as I put the fence up, they won't fly over the fence and land in there. So it's interesting. They won't go
It is,
past
because
that.
they can fly.
Yeah,
But they don't.
They don't go in.
Yeah.
And then I have birds are a huge problem. So I bought it's a bird guard, and it's just a set of speakers, and it has a little chip in it, and you plug the chip in, and you select which birds you want to. It'll go up to 7 or 8 different birds. The interesting part is I had plugged that in for the first time a couple of years ago, and I flipped the switch on, the speakers blasted out through the vineyard, and literally all of a sudden I saw all these birds scatter. Like, there are a lot of birds in here. But it also had a red-tailed hawk call on it, and
Oh,
I
that'll
flipped
do
that
it.
switch on,
Boy.
and all of a sudden from all different directions, red-tailed hawks started flying.
they?
Like, this thing works great. And from that on, I haven't had any bird problems, and I only need it for probably from the beginning of August through the end of September, beginning of October.
That's a pretty creative way to scare the birds off because we have a gentleman who farms in a lot of areas of Shrewsbury that actually is he's turned almost into a commercial farmer. He is a commercial farmer, and but he uses the cannon.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every year around that time, we get calls,
Neighbors,
people
yeah,
complaining about the
it's a
kid. I
tough
said,
Yeah.
it's a farm, he can do it.
Right.
Uh,
That's
you know,
right.
and he tries to minimize it, but the bird thing is pretty interesting.
Well, it is loud though, and you know, we try to keep it turned down so we don't offend the neighbors. But we did have one neighbor who walks the street constantly, and she's I think an avid bird watcher. And one day she was over there with her field glasses, looking around to see, okay, what kind of bird is this? Because I can't identify the bird. And I said, what are you looking for? She said, well, there's this really odd bird. I can hear it. It's really loud. And I said, I think that's my bird. My bird music. So I don't think you're going to see anything.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So we got about 2 minutes, Mark. Okay, well, I guess we'll start to wrap it
Tell
up.
people again the address, I guess.
Yeah,
Again.
614 South Street, Broken Creek Vineyards. Come down. There's a great place. I think you'd be really, really impressed with it. It's a really nice place. A great part of Shrewsbury, and hopefully Eric and Peg. Hopefully this works out really great for you, and you get some traffic off of this. And we'll see you at the next Selectmen's Roundtable.
Yep, we'll do. Food.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Eric Prusi. I'm the owner of Broken Creek Vineyard. We purchased the property back in 2010. In 2011, we started the plantings. We had our first round of plantings. It was 7 rows, 7 different varieties. We wanted to see what it specifically grew on the property. Now we've whittled down to 4 major varieties. We have 2.5 acres planted. The 4 varieties, 3 whites, 2 reds, Marquette, which is it's a Pinot Noir that's been crossbred with a Sauvignon Blanc. And the goal there was to get something that would actually grow, a vinifera grape that would grow in the New England region because of the cold weather we have here. The other 3 are Vidal Blanc, Vigneault, and Cuga White. And we actually blend Riesling with our Cuga White to create what we call our summer white, which is probably our best seller here right now. Hours of operation right now are Saturday and Sunday, 12 to 5. Our website is brokencreekvineyard.com. We are actually open by appointment only on Fridays. We do hold events, so if you want a bridal shower, corporate event, civic events, we can house up to 45 people, and we have held a number of different events here in the past few weeks.